Hello everyone, and welcome to our third installment of the self-defense video series brought to you by Premier Martial Arts and the Emily Taylor Center. My name is Emily Hull, and I'm the instructor for the series, as you likely already know. If you haven't watched our first two videos yet, I would recommend going and doing that. Today won't be directly related, but it might be a good idea to just watch them in order. So today we're going to be talking about why we learn self-defense, why it's important statistically, and also um, how Krav Maga addresses the issues that we have talked about so far in why we need self-defense. So first, I would just want to throw up a quick trigger warning. I recognize that this presentation will include information on some sensitive topics that could be triggering for some individuals. So if that sounds like it would apply to you, I would encourage you to consider skipping to the section about Krav on slide 10, because that will avoid all of the violence prevalence statistics and the victim selection process. So if you want to go ahead and do that, now might be the time. Before you do, though, I also want to put up our policy on victim blaming. We want to make sure that we never place the blame on the victim of violent crime. It is never your fault if you are the victim of violent crime. The only person responsible for violent crime is the perpetrator. So just because you may have done something that increased your likelihood of becoming a victim, or just because you were the victim, does not mean that it was your fault. The only reason that we will be talking about victim selection processes and common victim characteristics today is because of this quote. By being aware of what attackers look for, we can reduce the risk of becoming targets ourselves. By just simply being aware of these attributes of our personality or appearance, we can increase our self-protection in those areas. It doesn't necessarily mean that we need to change them, but it may be something that we just need to think about and acknowledge that it is there. So with that, if you want to skip forward, now would be the time to do so. I'm going to put up some statistics here that could potentially be triggering, so I'll leave a second for you to do that. The rest of us who are staying here, we will now commence with our discussion on the prevalence of violence. So here we see some Department of Justice crime statistics from 2014 to 2018 for different types of violent crimes, as you can see here down the left column. A couple of things statistically that I want to point out. 2018 is our reference year, so anytime you see statistical significance on any level, that is based off of 2018. And if you see a single cross like this with one bar, that means it's statistically significant at 95%, meaning that this is well outside what we would expect our normal random variation to be. If you see a cross with two bars, that means that it is at the 90% level. So not as high, but still significant statistically. So here we can take a look at the four types of violent crime that we will most likely be talking about in our seminars and that are most normally associated with self-defense. So you can see here that our rape and sexual assault rates per 1,000 people have pretty much stayed the same between 2014 and 2017 until 2018 when they launched to 2.7. So that's almost a doubling. So that's something that we really want to keep an eye on. Next up is assault. It hit a low in 2015 that was statistically significant. However, overall, it's been mostly staying the same. It does seem to have taken a little bit of a jump from 2017 to 2018, but it's not statistically significant, so it's within our bounds of random variation. Our next one is domestic violence, which seems to be holding steady at 4 per 1,000, 5 per 1,000, around that area. And none of those are statistically significant, but it's still something that we would like to see lowering in the future. Stranger violence is normally what you hear about in self-defense, being attacked by somebody that you don't know. And those were heading down for a while for the past couple years until 2018 when it jumped to 9.1, which is a difference of 1.6 from 2017. Again, it's not statistically significant. That just means that it's within normal variation, but the trend is still going up as of 2018. So I made this chart to help visualize a little bit all of these numbers. So here you can see I have 4 categories, the ones that we just looked at, and we have our prevalence per 1,000, and these are the numbers that were on there. You can see that statistically significant low in 2015 for assault. You can see the general upward trends in 2018. All of these categories per 1,000, in prevalence per 1,000 went up from 2017 to 2018. So that's just something to take a look at. So overall, this averages down to 729 violent crimes per hour, 580 assaults, 84 rapes and sexual assaults, and 165 violent crimes causing injuries. All of these are per hour. I took the total numbers, divided by 365 days, and then by 24 hours to get these. They look quite staggering right now, and truth be told, they are. In an ideal world, in a perfect world, these would all be 0. However, since that's not realistic, our practical idea would still be much, much lower than what these numbers are showing. So what this means is it just illustrates why self-defense is important. Hopefully, if we learn how to protect ourselves, it'll give us that confidence to be able to walk around and become less of a victim. And the more and more people who do that, the less people are going to be chosen as victims, and those crimes likely won't be committed nearly as often as these numbers that we see here. So now let's move on to a little bit of the victim selection process. How do attackers choose their victims? So the studio that I train with and I teach at, Premier Martial Arts, is a Krav Maga Universal Family School. So the information on this slide will be coming from our student handbook. If you would like more on that student handbook, I can get one for you or get you more information. If you reach out, my email will be at the end. So if you would like to do that, please reach out and we can discuss that. But back to victim selection, we use the SIVA process, SIVA. It is an acronym. So the S stands for selection. Usually victims are chosen based on various criteria that the attacker comes up with before they start selecting victims. We'll talk more about specifics on selection here on the next slide. For right now, let's move on. I is isolation. They wait to get the victim alone. There are 3 main reasons why they do this. The first is there's no one to hear if the victim calls for help. The second is there's no one to see it who could potentially testify as a witness later on. And third, there's no one to intervene with the crime while it's happening. So those are 3 reasons. They'll wait to get you alone, where you're walking by yourself, you may be distracted, and there could be other factors that go into isolation as well. The V is verbalization, so it's either used as a distraction or to get close enough to the chosen victim. So as a distraction, if you're walking by yourself and you hear somebody shout at you, that's likely going to catch you at least a little bit off guard. So they use that moment of confusion to then initiate the attack. To get close enough, sometimes attackers will come up and they will be friendly with you. Hey, can you look at this map? Can you tell me where this place is or where I can find this person? Hey, do you have the time? I'm running late for a meeting. Something like that gets them close enough to the victim so that they can then make physical contact. That's our A, is attack or assault. So that's when physical contact is attempted or made. I say attempted because assault, under some definitions and in some jurisdictions, does not require physical contact, and being in a dangerous physical situation does not require that they touch you first. We'll talk about that here in a little bit as well. But this is SIVA. This is how attackers usually choose their victims. So now let's go into a little bit more on selection. So there are some common characteristics of victims that can make them more likely to be chosen. Some are obvious. If you go to an ATM, you don't want to flash around all the cash you just pulled out of your bank account. If you are wearing expensive jewelry or nice clothing, that could increase your chances. If you have long hair, that's easy to grab, and that's a control aspect. Baggy clothing that is easy to remove. I'm sure all of you have the imaginations for what that would entail. And then there are some more things that are not so obvious. So these are called precipitators. They're personal attributes that increase a person's likelihood of being criminally victimized. In a study, the source that I've cited here from Psychology Today, there was a study done with inmates at a jail who were convicted of violent crimes, and they were asked what made them choose their victims. And then there was also a part of the study where they analyzed videos of people to pick out who they would choose as their victims. And some of the things subconsciously that they did were they looked for people who were walking slowly, who seemed like they were walking unevenly, as if with a limp, and lacking that confidence and wholeness. So that led to them being seemingly easy to control and to overwhelm. So even just those little things in like your walking style or your gait could increase your chances for being selected as a victim. Distractions are also another huge thing. When you're on the phone, a lot of times people will say that is a deterrent for being attacked because there's someone on the other side who can hear what's going on and alert the authorities. However, it's also a distraction. That's one of the reasons against talking on the phone and driving. Your reflexes are hampered when you are focusing on a conversation and you're not paying as much attention to the world around you and the situation that you're in. And so if there's something that could tip you off to a bad situation, you might be missing that because you're distracted. Texting is kind of the same thing, but it's way worse. Not only are you not paying attention and you're focused on the message that you're writing, but your hands are also tied up and you aren't even using your sight to detect potential indicators of a dangerous situation. There could be somebody following you and you wouldn't see them, you maybe wouldn't hear them depending on how focused you are, and your hands are tied up in the event that they did try to make physical contact. So texting is bad. Reading a map is, well, I'll say texting is bad in the context of self-defense. It's not necessarily a bad thing, just maybe make a point of being aware of your surroundings. Reading a map is kind of along the same lines. If you're lost, you're likely already stressed, so that puts a little more adrenaline in your system. So if you're reading a map, just make sure, check your surroundings, check behind you. Don't be solely focused on that. Still have an awareness of what's going on outside of your little bubble. That brings up a good point. You may never change the way you look, dress, or act, and that is okay. This is a point that I really wanted to make during this presentation, and it's part of what went into our policy on victim blaming and things like that. You may never change your hairstyle. If you've seen my first two videos, you know that I have super long blonde hair. I will never change that about myself. And I know that increases my risks of being chosen as a victim, but I'm never going to change that. And that's okay. If I were to be selected because of that, it would not be my fault. Remember, the only person who is responsible for violent crime is the person who does it, the perpetrator, the attacker. So you may never change the way you walk. If you walk slower or you have an injury that affects your gait, that may increase your chances, but that's okay if you never change that. That's just something, even being aware of it and potentially addressing it, or at least thinking through it, already helps your situation by just knowing that it's there. So now let's talk a little bit about our solution to all of these seemingly ginormous problems that we've been talking about today. And that solution is Krav Maga. Krav Maga is an Israeli self-defense system that focuses mainly on instinctive responses, or at least defenses that are based off of instinctive responses. Another thing about Krav is it incorporates verbal de-escalation and preemptive action. So instead of just the physical techniques, once contact has already been made, it includes techniques on how to diffuse the situation and try to avoid physical contact altogether, or preemptive action, which takes the initiative and ends the situation physically before they even have a chance to make physical contact in the first place. So that's something that sets Krav apart from other self-defense martial arts, is that you don't have to wait for them to come to you. You can take it into your own hands and try to either diffuse or take care of the situation right then and there. Krav also only has one single golden rule: go home safe. We do whatever it takes to go home safe. Too many rules make things sticky. You'll be focusing more on following the rules than you will be on protecting yourself. And that's definitely not a mind space we want to be in. So that's why overall, overarching, we have one single rule: go home safe. So I'm a firm believer in thinking what we are learning has a past, and it's important to understand that past to understand why we are learning what we are today. So while this may seem like a pretty lengthy history to some of you, as somebody with a much, much lengthier knowledge of the history, this is the barest bones that I could get it down to. So I will attempt to be brief for you. If you would like a more lengthy version, please reach out and I will get that to you. This is based off of the Krav Maga Universal Handbook as well. So the history of Krav is heavily tied to the Jewish state of Israel. It evolved with the state and it has changed with the state through its various stages of history. Krav started with an organization called the Haganah and a man named Moshe Feldenkrais, who wrote Jiu-Jitsu and Self-Defense. This was the first place where the basis of Krav was kind of formulated, and this was the first place where the connection between reflexes and instinctual defenses was made. So this was the first place where that really, really strong principle of Krav was formulated, and Moshe was the one who did that. Krav has taken many names over time, including Kapap, Sport Magen, and Judo Shimushi. This just shows like the evolution. These come with different organizations and influential people that have changed the name over time. In 1944, Emi Lichtenfeld joined the Haganah as a Sport Magen instructor, and this was shortly before 1948 when Israel declared independence and the Israeli Defense Force, the IDF, replaced the Haganah. So Emi is a very, very influential person in the history of Krav Maga. If you Google the history of Krav, a lot of times it will come up as Emi Lichtenfeld, the creator of Krav Maga. While that's not completely false, he was extremely influential, especially after the IDF came into existence. He was not the only person who created it, and it was around for hundreds of years before he was involved. So just something to keep in mind if you do more research on your own. Krav Maga became the official term in the 1950s, and that was kind of set in stone in the IDF, and that's what they decided to name it, what they were teaching their military. Beyond that, Emi was a huge part in developing it as a civilian martial art, and that is what we are going to be learning throughout the duration of these self-defense videos. So if you have any questions over the history of Krav, or you would like a more detailed version, please let me know. I'd be happy to get that to you. However, I understand that not everybody is a huge history buff, so I kept it short here. So now let's talk a little bit about why Krav works now that we know where it came from. So Krav is a principle-based system. This is one of the things that differentiates it from other martial arts systems. So principle-based means you do what works for you as an individual based on your size, your ability, your training level, and then it also means you do what works for the situation. If you get thrown into a situation that you've never seen before in class, we don't want to get tied down by all of those sticky rules, right? We want to be able to adapt, and the principle-based system allows us to do that. Krav also prepares us for the worst case scenario. This means that we always say in training that we're never going to get attacked on our best day. When we're feeling amazing, nothing in our bodies is injured, we feel like we could run a marathon, that's just not realistic. So to prepare for the less than perfect days that we all have when we could be attacked and there could be other problems going on that we have to take into consideration when doing our defenses, we work from a place of disadvantage. So what that means is maybe they've already made physical contact with us and we're trying to end the situation and go home safe. Or maybe we are under a stress test and we are fighting 3 different people at once, and that's at a very large disadvantage for us because we're outnumbered. Or maybe we train like our left arm is injured, and so we can only use our right arm because our left arm is in a sling, or something to that effect. We always train from a place of disadvantage to help prepare us for that worst case. Like I already mentioned, Krav also builds on instinctual responses. That means that those instinctual responses are inherently going to be faster than trained responses because they are in our muscle memory already and they deal with the fundamentals of our evolution and our cognitive base. That means that those defenses based off of those reactions and reflexes are going to be so much faster than the responses that we would have to train and unnatural movements. Krav is also super simple and direct. We focus on large movements, not fine motor movements, because when you go under stress, all of that goes out the window. And we teach the same thing to our kids as we do our adults, maybe with small variations, but they're basically the same technique. So this means that anyone, no matter your size, your age, your ability, you should be able to do the same techniques. Now, there are exceptions, but for the most part, the simplicity of Krav is what makes it work for most everybody. We will get more into all of these principles in later videos. I've set aside an entire video to talk about the principles when we start learning our physical self-defense techniques, because then we will learn our techniques and we will implement those principles in real life so you can see how they really benefit the self-defense. So the last thing I want to leave you with is my email. You can see it here. I've said it before in my videos. If you ever have any suggestions or questions based on the videos that I make, please reach out to me at Premier and the Emily Taylor Center. And me personally, we love to hear the community feedback on what we can do better and what we should include in the future. So because our curriculum right now is very, very fluid and alive, we can modify it based on what people in the community who are watching the videos think. So if you have any questions, suggestions, if you would like more information on the Krav Maga Universal Handbook or a longer history of Krav, please reach out to me and let me know what I can do for you to assist you in your journey to learning self-defense. So I just want to thank you all for coming today. I hope this was super informative. This is a lot more in depth than we would be able to do in our in-person seminars, so I'm glad to have this opportunity to share this with you. Next week, we'll start working on our self-defense stance and learning some physical bases for Krav, the basics that you need to know before you can move on to the techniques. So with that, I will leave you today. That's all I have planned. So thank you for coming out. If you have any questions, let me know. And I hope to see you next week.